Today's speaker is one of the library's own. Rob Lopresti retired in 2018, just a few months ago. After 31 years as a librarian at Western, he spent 9 of those years as our map librarian, and his retirement is the reason that I am filling in this role today. Rob is also an award-winning author of several scholarly articles, 2 novels, and more than 60 mystery and fantasy stories. And his recent work of nonfiction, When Women Didn't Count, The Chronic Mismeasure and Marginalization of American Women in Federal Statistics, is the result of 4 decades of work with government publications, and recently won ALA's Margaret T. Lane Virginia F. Saunders Memorial Research Award in 2018. So without further ado, I welcome to the podium Rob Lopresti.
Thanks so much, Madeline. Wow, thanks for coming. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you guys in the back hear me? All right, is that louder? Thumbs up, okay, there we go, good. I'm going to start out by thanking everyone, because I'm sure I'll forget at the end. So thank you very much to everyone who you just heard. So, To Catch a Map Thief is the title. And I want to clarify by saying that when we're going to be talking about a lot of material that was stolen, some of which we got back, and we're going to be talking largely about maps, but it's not stuff from the map collection, okay? Because when these events happened, the map, what is now the map collection, was the Huxley College Map Library. It was over in Arnson Hall. A couple of years after these events, Huxley College decided to give us responsibility for it, and we wound up having to move it over here. We changed the name because we didn't want people looking for the Huxley College Map Library over there when it's over here. So now it's called the Map Collection. So what actually happened was most of this material belonged to the Government Information Collection. At the time this happened, I was not the map librarian, I was the government documents librarian, or government information librarian. And we're going to go into this in some detail here. So just to be clear about that. And, okay, February 2006, that's when this happened. It was actually the Friday of President's Day weekend. And as I said, I was a government information librarian. And someone else who worked in government information was Julie Fitzgerald. The next week was her last week in that job. She had been promoted to the head of acquisitions, which is what position she still has as far as I know. And she came out on Friday to make sure that the student workers had put the government documents back where they belonged. And when she went out, she found an older gentleman, he was actually in his 70s, who was looking at publications of the Congressional Serial Set, which we'll get into in a minute. Now, that's fine. Anyone is welcome to come in and use the library material. Happy to have that happen. But she noticed that he was behaving suspiciously. He was paying a lot of attention to the people around him, looking to see if they were paying attention to him. Now, I want to make it clear that everything Julie did was following the procedure at the time. We have changed some of our procedures since then, okay? She saw him doing things that she thought looked suspicious, but she didn't see anything that she felt she could report. Okay? She came back twice to look at him. He noticed her each time. Third time he asked her where to get a cup of coffee in town. But she didn't see him doing anything that she felt she could report. As I said, we've changed some of the rules. Okay, the most important thing I'm going to say in the whole next half hour is what happened on Tuesday. Monday was President's Day, so she wasn't there. Tuesday, she did follow-up. Okay? She went looking for the books that he had been looking at. And she did not find them on the table that he had been working at. She did not find them on the shelf where they belong. She didn't find them on a truck waiting to be shelved. She wandered through the stacks, which is library jargon for bookcases, and she found them out of order, upside down, and clearly damaged with pages sliced out. Okay? And I will always remember her coming up to me and saying, "We've got a problem," which indeed we did. Warning, the next few slides may not be suitable for all audiences. I mean that quite sincerely. These are some examples of what we found. Okay?
Wow.
And by the way, there you go. I actually thought that the guy who we're going to be talking about, was hidden in the library all weekend. But he says he didn't. He says he did it all in one day. Anyway, so all these yellow pages are things that we're missing. Okay? Or not okay? No. Now, virtually everything that was damaged was from the U.S. Congressional Serial Set. So let's take a moment to talk about the Congressional Serial Set. I am a government information librarian. I can't help myself. Congressional Serial Set, and I'm going to slightly oversimplify, are reports to and from Congress. Okay? It started in 1789, continues to the present day. Okay? And there is no library in the entire world, including the Library of Congress, that has a complete physical set of the Congressional Serial Set. However, it has been digitized. And when we looked into it decades ago, it turned out that a digital set of the Congressional Serial Set cost about $600,000. So we did not get it. However, a couple of years ago, Dean Greenberg of the libraries called me up, another conversation I will never forget, and said, guess what? We bought so much from ProQuest, which is a company that digitizes these things, that they essentially threw it in as a freebie. It wasn't free, but it was almost. So I went to a government information librarian meeting in Washington State and told them that we had the Congressional Serial Set digitized, and one person actually screamed, "I hate you." They were that jealous, because there are not many libraries in the Northwest that have the Congressional Serial Set digitized. We have it from 1789 to 1969. Okay? And this is the web page I created for that. You're welcome to go there and look at it. Go to the library web page, type in serial set. This will pop up. It goes on for several screens worth of information. That is a picture from, I believe, 1859. That is a drawing of Mount Baker. Okay? So, and by the way, on this page you'll find many examples which you can link to or go to of publications in the Congressional Serial Set. Now, I'm sure some of you out there are saying, surely there must be something more interesting than publication that reports to and from Congress. In fact, I can't think of anything more boring than reports to and from Congress. And to back up your stereotypes, I decided to look quickly for the most boring thing I could find in the Congressional Serial Set. Here's what I came up with. This is a 1916 report on a proposed law to provide funding for sewers in the auditor's building. You can't get much more dull than that, right? Okay. So, why would you care about that? Because you work in the auditor's building. All right, I'm sure that's gone by now. So, let's see if I can convince you that there are more interesting things in the Congressional Serial Set. This is one page of Lewis and Clark's report on their journey, okay? Specifically, part of a report on the Indian tribes they met as they traveled across the West, okay? This is, as they say, primary document. This is the original source. All right. This is a request from the Washington Territorial Legislature just after Washington became a territory in 1855. One of the first things they did was request that George Bush, not that one, George W. Bush, not that one, okay, be allowed to own the land he farmed in Tumwater, Washington. He was the founder of Tumwater, Washington. He was a very important citizen in the territory. A lot of people felt they owed their lives to him because he was one of the first people to get food in the ground, crops in the ground, and he shared with the people who needed it. But he was not allowed to own the land, and they requested the Congress make a special exception that he be allowed to own the land. Does anyone know why he could not own the land? Yeah.
Was he black?
He was black. If you look down at the bottom of the page, it says a free mulatto. Okay? And the reason he went into Washington, and some people say we would be British territory if he hadn't, because a whole bunch of people followed him in. The reason he went to Washington was he wasn't allowed as a black person to live in Oregon. Okay? So, is this more interesting than the sewers? Okay. Let's jump ahead to 1950. Employment of homosexuals and other sex perverts in government. Okay? So, you never know what you're going to find in here. And I'm going to tell you my favorite example. Okay? One day I was working in the Hackerell Research and Writing Studio. I was sitting behind a desk with a big sign that says, "Ask me for questions, ask me for help." And I hope you all know that if you go right across there to the research and writing studio, you can go in and ask for help on writing or research or writing a term paper, writing a resume, whatever. So I was sitting there and I heard two students at the next table over, and they were calling random government agencies in Walla Walla and asking, do you have any information on the history of the Walla Walla River? I'm sitting right next to them with a sign that says, ask me questions, right? Now you may think, history of the Walla Walla River doesn't sound like a government information question. There's an old saying, if all you have is a hammer, all your problems look like nails, right? I'm a government information librarian. I think of government information. So I went over to them with my computer and I said, hi, let me show you the Congressional Serial Set. 200 publications about the Walla Walla River. Wow. Okay, when I left an hour later, they were still slogging through it, happy as clams. Okay, so that is the Congressional Serial Set. I almost said Congressional Record. Congressional Serial Set. Okay, and almost everything that was damaged was from those books. I need to say in my own defense, one of the first things I did when I got here 30 plus years ago was take the most valuable volumes of the serial set and lock them up in special collections. I was not nearly pessimistic enough. Okay, I should have locked up more. You live and learn. Okay, so what was stolen? I'm glad you asked. Julie Fitzgerald, remember her, found 6 damaged publications. And we put them on a truck. We called the university police and so on. But it turned out it was a little more than that. We found more than 100 damaged books. We found more than 600 pages gone. And we literally don't know how many pages were gone because, surprise, in the 1850s they didn't always say, we're putting an illustration on the next page, right? So we can't always tell that something was gone. But we know that 74% of them were maps. About 22% were prints, photos, or tables. Okay? And here's a few examples of these were actually pages that were gone, were taken. Okay? Map of the seat of war in Florida, 1835. That is an engraving of a lobster, and this is a key thing. It was also true of that Mount Baker picture that I showed you before. The engraving was actually in black and white. This is hand colored. Okay? Not here. It was hand colored at the printing office. Okay? And that means that collectors consider each of these to be an individual work of art because they're all going to be slightly different. Okay. That's how they spelled Grand Canyon in 1889. That's a photograph if you can't tell. This is from the atlas of the 1903 census, 1900 census, excuse me. Every couple of decades, the Census Bureau has put out an atlas where they take all the numerical information from the census and they do it as maps. We have the most recent one is from the 2000 census. We have it over there. You can see it on the web. It's much prettier in paper. Okay. Photograph of a Native American chief. Okay, so that's just a few random samples of the 600 pages. Okay, so what happened next? Well, I got to tell you, it is really, really tempting, and nobody knows better than me, when you realize something like this has happened, it's really tempting to say, we're not going to tell anybody, okay? Because it's embarrassing. It makes you look rotten. But that's sleeping with the enemy, okay? That's helping the bad guys. So we immediately notified the police. We notified other libraries so they could check, especially in the area, to see if anything had happened at their libraries. In fact, we checked with the map library to make sure that nothing had happened at Huxley College Map Library. We notified the internet because we wanted to spread this news as quickly as possible. Okay. About the investigation. Now, I did a little hard thinking here and I said, 600 pictures missing. Is he going to frame them all and put them on his wall? Probably not. What's he going to do with them? Sell them. So if you want to find him selling them, where are you going to look? eBay. Yeah, eBay. Now eBay has a feature, which you may or may not know about, called a permanent search. You can set up a search and they will inform you for 6 months anytime something comes up that meets your search. So for example, one of our missing maps was the Buttermilk Channel in New York. I always remember that one. And so I set up a search there, and anytime a map of Buttermilk Channel came up, or a book about Buttermilk Channel, or a poem about Buttermilk Channel, or a painting of Buttermilk Channel, I was informed. 50 searches. We set up 50 searches. What happened then? By March 6th, I went to my boss, the Dean of Libraries, who was not Mark, it was a different one, and I said, I know who at least one of the thieves is. Okay, because there was one store on eBay that was selling more maps that looked like they could be ours than anybody else. And that was called Montana Silver, which the owner of which said it was located on an Indian reservation in Belt, Montana, which turned out to be a lie, which becomes significant later on. And so what I did was I contacted 2 friends on the East Coast, and I said, please buy these maps, and we will reimburse you for them. Because why didn't I buy them myself? So what would he have done if he found that someone in Bellingham was buying the maps, right? Book of matches, they're all gone. So I had friends on the East Coast buy them. They didn't open the packages. They just mailed them to the university police. The university police sent them on. Let's see. We'll get to that in a moment. But this is one of the maps. This was actually not one of the ones that my friends bought. This is one that showed up a year later. And I was so happy to see this. This was on Montana Silver's website. And the reason I was so thrilled to see this was, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a tiny little blue dot at the top of this page. Okay? Every government publication in our library, we have a blue stripe on the top. So just to indicate what part of the library to put it in. So we knew as soon as I saw that, that is a publication that probably, a page that probably came from one of our publications. Okay, so I was really happy. Okay, the investigation continued, and so my friends sent the maps to the university police. The university police sent them to the Washington State Police Crime Lab. And the crime lab was actually able to look at those maps, look at the books, and prove that they actually came from those books, that they were sliced out of those pages. Okay. Now, let's talk about the support we got on the search. The person who was assigned to the search on the day it happened was Corporal Bianca Smith, who I'm happy to say is now Sergeant Bianca Smith of the University Police. And I think one of the reasons she's promoted was because of her work on this. I sincerely believe it should be. Yeah. She was fantastic. She was crucial throughout. And one of the things she did was she talked to her fellow police officers at the University Police. And one of them had a brilliant idea. He was the, I don't know his name, I'm sorry. He was the parking officer. I can't find a logo for the parking office, so there's a map of our parking lots. He said, check for parking tickets that were issued the day of the theft. Because here's a crazy idea. People who steal from libraries don't always put money in the meter. Huh? And this drove me crazy because I write mysteries. You know, I should have thought of that. You know how Son of Sam was caught? Parking tickets. Okay, I should have thought of that, darn it. But he did. And it turned out a car from Montana had gotten a parking ticket, and the driver fought it successfully because the information on the form was wrong. Okay? So, but we had the information. And so Corporal Smith got his driver's license from the state of Montana and 5 other older gentlemen's driver's license. I said, why do they have to be older? Well, just pick 5 men at random, you know, because, right. But anyway, she picked 6 guys who looked like him. And Julie said, remember Julie, she saw the guy? She picked him out immediately. Now, I don't know if I have permission to show his driver's license picture, so I have blocked him out. You will see him later, trust me. But his name was James Lyman Brubaker. Let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Brubaker. He's a retired football coach. He is a convicted counterfeiter. And I understand he is the founder of an art magazine in the West. Okay? You may wonder how all this fits together. I don't know how the football coach fits. Actually, I do know how the football coach fits together, but we'll get to that. As I understand it, the way he became a counterfeiter was he had a foundry where he would make Western art, copies of famous things, and he realized that he could make copies of old coins, you see, which would be valuable, and that was how he became a counterfeiter and went to prison for it years ago. He was, as I said, in his 70s. I believe he was 72 at this time. Okay. So, fall of 2006. Let's review where we are. 6 to 8 months after the theft. What did we have? Did we have any evidence? Yes, we had proof that he was selling our maps, right? The lab had proven that. We had proof that he had been on our campus, or at least his car had been. Okay? And we had witness identification. Okay, all right, case closed. We're ready to go. It took an entire, more than a year after this point. And the reason it took more than a year was we had to find some government agency that had jurisdiction and interest in pursuing this. One, they did not say it to me, but I have been told that one federal agency said, we don't work with crimes that have only one victim. And I said, there's no way on God's green earth we're the first place this guy robbed. Okay, first of all, look at all the pages he's selling on ebook. But he was way too professional for that. But anyway, we could not find, and by the way, another reason was that Corporal Smith, who was the one pursuing this, she had other things to do than contact government agencies. And also there was the fact that, again, he lied about where he was located. So she was talking to the wrong people in terms of do this. But she eventually found out that Mr. Brubaker lived in Great Falls, Montana. And she contacted Detective Bruce McDermott in Great Falls, Montana. And this was the breakthrough that we needed, because McDermott happened to know that the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Department was interested in Mr. Brubaker. Why? Because they thought he had Indian artifacts that didn't belong to him. Okay? Why is Fish and Wildlife Services interested in Indian artifacts? Anyone guess? It's illegal to own parts of the bald eagle. Okay? They're an endangered species. It's illegal to own them, except Native Americans can own headdresses that contain parts of the bald eagle. All right? And so Detective McDermott said, hey, here's this agency with the jurisdiction and no evidence, and here's Corporal Smith with the evidence and no jurisdiction. You guys want to talk to each other. Okay? I met Detective McDermott and thanked him. And suddenly, in the late fall of 2007, I got this flurry of phone calls and emails from Montana saying, is anything currently for sale that belongs to you? Yeah, we're pretty sure it is. How much is it worth? How much was the total value of what was stolen? I gave them some figures on that. Suddenly, and then there was silence and a rush and silence. It got very dramatic. And then on December 12, 2007, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, okay, raided property that belonged to Mr. Brubaker. Now you may say, why in heaven's name was ICE doing that? Okay, because he was selling things across the border, which made it a federal crime that they could pursue. So they raided his property. What did they find? I'm glad you asked. More than 20,000 maps, prints, and lithographs. One victim, right? 800 books with stamps from over 100 libraries. More than 1,000 Indian artifacts. Okay? They also found magnets for desensitizing books that he was stealing from libraries, cutting devices for getting stuff out of libraries, sanders to erase stamps from libraries, coloring agents to cover stamps from libraries, and other things that I'm not going to tell you about. Okay? Because I don't trust you. Okay. Okay. Now, along the way, before this happened, back in a few months before that, June 2007, I was invited to appear at the American Library Association conference in Washington, D.C. to speak on a panel about theft of books, rare books from libraries. And I got up there and described a lot of what I just told you, but when it came to the investigation, I said, I can't tell you anything. Okay? I could have said, hey, his name is James Brubaker, he lives in Montana. But again, all it takes is a book of matches, everything's gone. So I said, I can't tell you anything. Investigation continues. One of the people who was there at the conference was Steve Toomey, who I found out now is a Pulitzer Prize winning author. And he called me up or emailed me and said he was writing an article for Smithsonian Magazine about theft. It was actually about the theft from the archives in Philadelphia. But he interviewed me. And when the Brubaker raid happened, I emailed him and said, it's probably too late for your article, but you might be interested in this. Well, he put it in as a sidebar. Okay? And the funny thing about this article is it never mentions Brubaker. It says a raid happened, but it doesn't mention him by name because he had not been arrested yet. Okay? Why had he not been arrested yet? Well, I'm going to speculate here. Okay? My speculation is that the government agencies wanted to see what would happen. Because he knew he was going to get arrested, but he hadn't been arrested yet. So they wanted to see who he talked to, whether he contacted some of his fellow thieves. They wanted to see if he went looking for money he had hidden somewhere. Okay? And eventually, they did arrest him, and here is his mugshot. I promised I'd show you a picture of him. There's Mr. Brubaker. Okay? Okay. So, Brubaker, what happened then? He pled not guilty. And I love this. He pled indigent, said he needed a lawyer provided by the court. This was in spite of the fact that the year he was arrested, Montana silver was the biggest moneymaker on eBay. Apparently he spent his money wildly, I guess. And I will be careful how I phrase this. He pled not guilty. The federal authorities then decided they were going to arrest his wife as an accessory. At that point, he pled guilty. And at that point, they decided to drop the charges against his wife. Okay. Now, anyone want to guess how long a sentence he received?
Not very.
Not very.
A year.
30 months.
Oh.
Now, I found out that the sentence was actually based on the value of what was stolen. And I was informed by the FBI that they contacted some of those 100 libraries, and they were informed, and the FBI asked those libraries what was the value of the material that was stolen, and only about half the libraries responded. So if more libraries had responded, he would have gotten a longer sentence. I did talk to some librarians about that, and one of them said they contacted us. They didn't say why they wanted the information. So slips on both sides, I guess. So, field trip. Around the time Mr. Brubaker was sentenced, I got to go at university expense to Great Falls, Montana, where I spent several days in the field office of the FBI. The field office in Great Falls, Montana normally has 2 FBI agents. One of them was on an assignment, and so there was only one guy there, which meant anytime he had to get up and go to the bathroom, I had to leave and be locked out because I couldn't be left in with all his files. But what was there? Oh, well, I and a couple of librarians who were volunteers, including one who used to work at Western, but Montana librarians came in with me, and we sorted through boxes and boxes and boxes of Mr. Brubaker's property. This was all his file cabinets. And in the back behind them, you can see cardboard boxes full of books, looking for publications that I had on my list of 600 or something pages that were missing from our collection. Okay? And this is an article from the local newspaper there. So, eventually we received 3 of our own books, which we did not know were missing. Okay? Almost 200 maps and other pages that had been stolen. And the next thing requires a little explanation. I said almost 800 or about 800 library books were found in his property. 1,000 were found in his property. About 800 they were able to figure out which library they belonged to. 200 they weren't. So the judge was going to have to decide what to do with them. I said, I have an idea what to do with them. Send them to the people who are responsible for you catching them. And the judge said, yeah. So we wound up getting 200 of them. We added some of them to our collection. We sold some of them. And there is a librarian now retired named Marion Alexander who did what I can only describe as forensic cataloging. She used catalogs of other libraries to figure out which books belonged to, 3 books, which libraries they belong to. So she can literally claim that she solved 3 crimes that stumped the FBI. And we also eventually got some money back from Brubaker, which we were owed. So here are some of the boxes showing some of the things that we received back. Okay, those are hand-colored pictures of fishies. These are some of the books we got from his collection. Okay, what has happened since the theft? Well, we changed some policies. We tightened up security. We're not going to tell you how. Okay, and I retired. and Corporal Smith became Sergeant Smith. Julie Fitzgerald got an Exceptional Effort Award, which was a little bit unusual because usually it's for something you do that year, and she got it for something she'd done 3 years before because we couldn't do it until Brubaker was caught, right? And here we are today, so I'm happy to answer questions. Yes, ma'am.
What happened after he was in there for 30 months?
He got out.
That's it?
What happened after he got out? What happened after he got out of prison? He got out. That's essentially all I know. Sorry. He's as far. I occasionally check. I have not seen any news about him. I think you had a question,
Yeah.
Barry?
Do you have any idea how much stuff he actually managed to successfully sell on eBay before
Or
they?
whatever else?
He was the biggest seller on eBay in terms of money. And keep in mind, virtually none of these things I'm talking about are like $10,000 maps. He was selling these things for $30 on average. Okay, so it was volume is where he made his money. So he was selling thousands of these things. By the way, when we notified eBay about this, when the government notified eBay about this after they raided him, eBay immediately closed his account, as they should. He immediately opened another account. They closed that again. And I lost what I was going to say. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I don't know how many he stole. I want to tell you that when this became news, I received emails from about 4 or 5 people who said, I bought maps from him. Here's what I bought. If they belong to you, I'll send them right back. So, you know, there are honest people out there. As it happened, none of those were ours, but I thank them very sincerely. Okay. Other questions? Yes?
Were they all around like Washington, or was it all across the country that he was going to?
Good. Oh, thank you. Was he going to libraries in Washington or all across the country? He went throughout the Northwest, and including Canada. And remember I mentioned I was going to tie football coach in? Okay. He would go wherever the University of Montana football team was playing. Okay, and that was his excuse for being in Washington State or wherever he was. Okay, and so, you know, if anyone asked, why are you here? That was his explanation. He was going to the game. Okay, so, yes?
I don't know if you said this or not. Was like Western the biggest? Like, did he steal the most from Western, or do you know who he stole?
I have no idea. Based on the fact that he obviously stole thousands and thousands of things, and he only stole 600 from us. I'm sure he stole lots from a lot of different places. How many, I have no idea. He did not steal many books from us. Yes?
Were you able to make any of the books whole again?
Were we able to make any of the books whole again? Great question. We have some of the pages back. We have the books that they came to. We have not paid to put them back in the books. We were actually considering doing that at the time we got the digital version, and then I decided, well, that's going to be for the job for the person who replaces me after I retire, to decide whether to spend the money on that or on something else. So that's where we are. Yes?
Has the sale or the offering of books or maps and images from books that have been taken apart, has that decreased since the Smithsonian article and the investigation?
Has the theft and selling of such things decreased since this investigation and Smithsonian article? I have no reason to think so. I don't know, but I would be surprised. Mark?
Rob, could you talk a little bit about your process of how you knew what had been cut out?
Oh.
So, I mean, you're faced with, unfortunately, like it's the absence of content. So how do you figure out what's absent in order to be able to be so specific about what might be ours?
Great question. How do I know what was missing? Okay. Well, I had to go volume by volume, and we have several thousand volumes of the serial set. And sometimes it was pretty obvious that something was missing, right? And I can't say I went page by page through everything, but I did look for anything that seemed to be have a page gone. And or if they had a list of illustrations, I'd look to see if the illustrations were there. The fact that an illustration was not there does not necessarily mean that Mr. Brubaker took it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it was there when the book was published, unfortunately. And there is a index to the serial set which has a multi-volume index of maps that are published in the serial set. This is commercially published, not from the government, so we didn't get a free copy as part of being a depository library, which I haven't mentioned. We are. So I had to borrow it from another library. There was no library in the state of Washington that had a copy of that index. And I borrowed that, and then I was able to find, for example, oh, there's a page missing from volume 227 of the serial set. I could find out what that would have been a map of if it was it would be in the map index. Does that make sense? So that's how I did that. Good question. Yes, sir.
What factors did you use when you determined the valuation of the missing pages? And were there any ones that the FBI used that were different than what you used?
I don't know how the FBI determined the value of the pages that were missing. I assume they copied whatever I told them. I don't think they were doing independent research on that. What I did was, by the time that, almost 2 years had passed, I'd been following Mr. Brubaker every day, okay? And I was able to say, he sold 500 pages, let's say, that look like ours. Here is the average value of those pages. It came to about $30. So I told the FBI, he stole 600 and something pages from us, multiply that by 30, and there you have a value. I also pointed out, if we wanted to replace these damaged books, that would cost like about $500 each. And if we wanted to buy the digitized version to replace them, that would be $600,000. So I gave the FBI 3 choices of how to value them. Okay? Okay. Yes?
Me?
Yeah, please.
How long did that process take you that you were describing of the...
Going through the books?
Yeah.
Couple of months. Took a couple of months to go through all the books, to do them all, to decide which ones were damaged. And I know I missed some. There's no way not to. Yeah. Yes?
What was the government agency that made the one victim comment?
I'm not going to name it because simply because it would be secondhand. I didn't hear it from. I heard it from the person who heard it, and I'm not going to repeat who it was because of that. Okay. So, yes.
You said that there are multiple copies of the congressional
Serial set.
But that we don't know if they're complete. Like, what are other libraries that have them? Were you able to compare with those?
That's a good question. I did not take the time to do that. I used the index to find maps, okay, but I wasn't going to try and compare other volumes because I honestly didn't have the time to do that. So she's asking, was I able to compare other copies? I mean, I've had to contact other libraries and have them look up the pages for me or go there, and I couldn't do those. As I said, there's no library in the world that has a complete set. University of Washington has the biggest set in this state as far as I know. Yes?
Has this experience in your investigation inspired anything that you've written in your fiction?
Has this experience inspired any of my fiction? No. I have given Mr. Brubaker way too many hours of my life. I don't want to do any more. So, yes?
The people that are buying these maps, are they doing it to frame them, and do they know where they're coming from?
Do the people who buy these things, why do they buy them, and do they know where they're coming from? I assume, and my understanding is they generally buy them to frame them, put them on the wall, especially if they have some local interest and significance to them. For example, Mr. Brubaker stole a page about a picture of Great Falls, Montana. That would be something you might want to hang on his wall. Do they know it's theft? I have to assume good faith on their part based on the number of people who wrote and said, I asked Mr. Brubaker where he was getting them from, and he said he was, I can't think of the word. getting rid of an old family collection. And by the way, of course, if you go into a used bookstore and you find a volume of the Congressional Serial Set, you can do anything you want with the darn thing, right? You can slice it, dice it, and give it to your friends and neighbors. You know, I mean, it belongs to you. So certainly, people who get their hands on it legitimately could slice it up. So there's no reason you would have to assume it was from a library. Okay. Other questions? Good questions. Yes?
He's stealing these pages to sell them, so he's just going through books saying, this one's pretty, I'll steal it.
Yep.
It's that profitable? It's
Well,
not path for me, but it's that profitable.
all I can say is that he was the biggest money maker on eBay the year he was caught, according to the FBI. And like I said, it was entirely volume, because I mean, he was selling them for $30 a piece. And yeah, I don't recommend it as a career move. You know, 30 months may not seem like long to you, but it's probably not how you want to spend your next couple of years. And you know, oh, never mind. I'll shut up. Yeah, yes?
Does he know about you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he knows about me. And honestly, after the raid and before he was arrested, I said to the detective or FBI agent, I don't remember which, should I be worried about this? He said, he's in his 70s. He's not going anywhere. So now he's close to 80.
Coaching a football team.
Yeah. Well, he was retired at the time.
Okay.
You had a question, Barry?
I just wanted to clarify. Did you say that it's suspected that he was only cutting these out on one day here?
That's what he says. I find it hard to believe, but that's what he says. Now, the library was closed that was on Friday. The library was closed on Saturday and I think Sunday for President's Day weekend. I thought that he probably stayed in the library. We did not have motion detectors. We do now! But he claims he did it all in one day. And, what can I tell you? He's obviously an honest man, so you have to believe him. Yes?
What happened with all the artifacts that you had in his possession?
What happened with the Indian artifacts? I have no idea. That's a great question. Actually, I am fairly confident that some were returned to Indian tribes in Canada. Or First Nations in Canada, I should say. But I don't know. It wasn't my problem. I had enough problems. Is there yes?
Did you guys have any theories on how he was able to smuggle them out of the library?
Yes. That's among the things I'm not going to tell you about. Yeah. I'll tell that to a card-carrying librarian. I'm not going to tell that to anybody else. Let me tell you something else, by the way. When this whole hugger-mugger had become public, I took a hugger-mugger? Is that funny? I took a list of all those books that we knew he had stolen, and I offered them to other libraries. That list. I said, here is a Christmas wish list for a thief. And if you have these books and they're not locked up in your rare book collection, you might want to put them in the rare book collection. And I am so paranoid that I would not email that list to anyone. I would only print it out. They had to send me a stamped self-addressed envelope, and over 100 libraries did. Okay? I said, just because make it that little bit harder for a thief to get their hands on it. In fact, one person said, he had a personal library, and I said, I'm not going to send it to you. Yeah. Anything else? Yes?
Well, I'm just curious because you said that you did get some money out of him, or somebody got some money out of him, and I just wondered, but
Western, not me.
Well, I was just wondering, did they get to keep their home or anything? Was there any real... If he's only in jail for 30 months, and if he really didn't lose his home or anything, it doesn't really seem like that was very much information.
So how much money did he lose? Did he lose his home? I don't know. Short answer. I don't know. Yes?
I'm struck by your comment about you gave Mr. Brubaker so many months of your time.
Yeah.
Did you conduct this investigation on your own time?
No, I was paid by the university to conduct this investigation. But it was plenty of hours.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not mean to imply that I was doing it out of the goodness of my heart as a volunteer effort. No, it was sucking up a whole lot of the university's time.
Yeah, it was.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much for coming.